Hi everyone, this is episode 7 of the Road to National Master, and I'm continuing my adventure. Adjust camera. I'm continuing my adventure at the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championship, and yeah, we finished rounds 2 and 3 of the event today, and with that being said, I think I'll just hop into the round 2 recap. Just a reminder, I'm board 2 for the Shippensburg University team, and so it's pretty exciting. So let's see if I can finish my thoughts here. So let's see. So my opponent played e4. I usually go for the Caro, and she plays the exchange with bishop d3. And I play knight c6, attacking the pawn in the center. After she defends, I go queen c7. This is actually the first time I've ever played this opening, this variation of this opening, I should say. Most of the time, I go knight of6. Knight of 6, but I didn't this time because I've been kind of, I don't know what's the word, frustrated, annoyed at the bishop f4 variation, where, like, there's all of these moves are very, very common, and they're all very, very good. And, like, there's so much theory here. Actually, queen takes b, taking the pawn on b7 is even bad. Most people don't even do that. They just castle. And I was like, and almost everybody knows the theory for this. So I was really afraid of that variation. And so instead of playing knight f6 and allowing bishop f4, I decided to go queen c7, guarding the f4 square from the bishop, and I was just gonna wing this opening from here. But she goes knight f3, which I think is relatively inaccurate. Relatively inaccurate. It's not the most precise way to play. There's a couple of more challenging ways to play, which is knight e2. So now if bishop g4, you can either kick the bishop like this, or kick the bishop like this. And there's also h3, not allowing the bishop to develop at all. So those are like the two more, as far as I know, the two more precise ways to play. Knight f3 kind of gives me easy development because I put my bishop out, and after she develops, I just continue with my development. But this c1 bishop is just a problem piece throughout the entire game. So that's why I think this setup is a bit difficult to play, and is not the most precise way to compare to knight e2 or h3 earlier. Anyways, so after she castles, I go bishop d6, and after h3, I keep the pin. I maintain the pin. I'm happy if she goes g4, and I'm just gonna go bishop g6. And if she does ever take, I have the open h file, and her king and the squares around her king are somewhat weak. And yeah, I'm not even castled kingside yet, so I can even castle queenside. So I wasn't worried about h3 and g4 because I haven't committed kingside castle yet, and even if I was, I think it would be okay. So h3, I keep the pin. If I did take, I think this will give her easy development. Maybe she could go bishop e3. Maybe even bishop g5 if the knight lands on f6, maybe. So I think so. That's why I keep the pin, making it harder for her to develop her pieces. And after queen c2, I just continue development. And like a move like h6 would be bad, or could be bad. I don't know if it's like absolutely bad, but because after g4, the bishop drops back. And yeah, I would say this is pretty bad. But it's kind of hard to attack the king. But anyways, black is down a pawn for nothing. And like, why would you do this? Like, yeah, white extended their pawns a little bit, but you can't castle anymore, which is pretty bad. And you don't want to go into a queen endgame. You're just simply down a pawn now. Actually, you might have to because this pawn is hanging otherwise. Anyways, so you can't play a move like h6 here. That would be bad because of g4. But now, after the knight moves to g7, if g4 is played, the knight guards the bishop. So if bishop takes, I can even go knight takes. And now the knight can hop in on the dark squares. And even if I didn't want to take with the knight, I could take with the pawn. because so yeah, you got to be careful about the h6 pushes with the bishop on h5. Anyways, so I develop, she develops, and I go rook c8. So I honestly wasn't sure how I wanted to develop yet. If Hi guys. Hi. If I didn't, I wasn't sure if how I wanted to develop yet. I wasn't sure if I wanted to castle one way or the other yet. But I settled on rook c8. Like sometimes in like the queen c7 lines, you can actually go castle queenside. I wasn't, and so I wanted to keep my options open, but in this case, I can't actually go castle because I got to rook e1. I can't castle because she takes the pawn with check and brings the bishop back. So I think h6 is another viable alternative. Or the most natural move in this position would be bishop g6. And we trade light square bishops. I have really, really great control over the e5 square. And I could even potentially push e5 at some points and do a pawn break when I'm ready. So this was the another alternative I was thinking about. I wasn't sure. I kind of like the idea that, like, if I just keep my bishop pinned, then that means she can never move this knight, or else I'm going to take and damage her structure, and she has a weak king. And if she doesn't move the knight, the d2 knight, that means she can never get the c1 bishop out, or at least it's more difficult to get the c1 bishop out, and it's going to take more time. So I actually liked keeping my bishop on h5 and not trading it, even though that would have made me have really great control of the e5 square. I still thought it was interesting to play like this to keep the bishop on h5. So after rook c8, she plays a3. I actually don't have a threat of knight b4. Like sometimes, let me just put a random move on the board. Sometimes knight b4 is a real threat because I attack the bishop and the queen. And in this case, you have to move your queen. Like let's say you didn't have this check. But let's and you like did this, then like you lose the bishop and everything's bad. And but like this isn't even a threat because of queen check, and I have to drop my knight back. If I do not drop my knight back, I lose the knight, and that would be very, very sad. So I actually don't think she needed to play a3 in this position because knight b4 wasn't even a threat. But honestly, she's just making waiting moves because she can't move these pieces either, and she's gonna run out of moves. Also, c4 is kind of hard to play right now. It's always a bit scary to play c4 for her because if I do take, it does give her the isolated d pawn, which isn't necessarily bad. But in this case, it looks a bit iffy because now knight b4 after queen check and knight here, this knight is no longer hanging. If the pawn was on c3, then the knight would be hanging. But with the pawn pushed one square forward, one square more, this knight isn't hanging, and the bishop has to move. But maybe this is still okay for her. But I think controlling the a3 square is a little bit important if you want to play c4. Maybe it's not. I'm not sure. But I think a3 didn't make sense because if I do castle, then knight b4 does become a threat. So a3 just seems like a useful move. But I do play h6. So now if I castle, I don't lose the pawn with check. So I play h6, and she does play c4. And after I take and she takes with the queen. You can't take with the knight, or it might be bad to take with the knight, I should say, because I damaged the structure. And after pawn takes, knight takes, oops, pawn takes. Oh wait, no, knight in between check, takes and takes. The pawns are weak here. This pawn is hanging. There's actually no way to defend it completely, and these pawns are really, really weak. And looks like it's gonna be bad news bears soon. So I don't think she wanted that. So, but even though in a position like this, it's usually good to take with the knight if possible because you win the dark squared bishop And the dark square bishop in the Caro is usually really, really good. And you really like that piece as black. Okay. So I think bishop takes was also okay, but she plays queen takes. And I castle, and she goes bishop e4. In this position, I was considering rook f d8. And I actually thought this was a very... It might have given her enough time to go knight f1 to and move this knight out of the way and get her bishop out. Although when we were analyzing after the game, like I had the pleasure to analyze this game a little bit with Emma and some of the other people from Ohio State University after the game. During the game, I was worried about knight f1, but analyzing it, seeing it on the board, I actually don't think knight f1 is that good. I forget why. Why did I think it was not good? Well, firstly, I could go f5 and force the bishop to move, and then take this knight and double these pawns and ruin the structure again. And you can't go queen takes e6 because I'm going to block with the bishop, and now both your bishop and your queen is hanging. And yeah, black is winning here. So you can't take the pawn with check. So, and if you go back, now I can do this, but you still lose this pawn with check. So I guess you know, you lose a pawn, but you damage white's structure. It's probably not worth it, I would imagine, because the knight on f1 actually does a good job of guarding the king. But maybe it's totally fine. I just don't like how white does have can get their bishop out more easily and get their other pieces back in the game. So, although I guess in this case, knight d4. Okay. So yeah, knight f1 does seem bad. The more I look at it, the more I am convinced that knight f1 is bad. So, okay. Although, of course, after knight f1, I don't have to play f5. I could do something else. But not really sure what else to do. Queen b6, attacking the pawn, could be a move. Yeah, but now bishop e3. And her problems are solved. Oh wait, no. Well, I guess knight e5. Knight e5, attacking the queen, and if the queen moves, I don't even know where to move it. Then what am I accomplishing? I guess I could get the rook on the second rank. This is one idea. But anyways, so yeah, maybe knight f1. Knight f1 is good. Yeah, I'm going back and forth on it now. Being live analysis here. So that's why I thought if I went rook fd1, rook fd8, I mean, she has time to go knight f1. So that's why I went queen b6. So that's why I didn't go rook fd8. I went queen b6 instead. And at this point, after queen b6, oh, I don't have my paper with me. I'm sad. I thought I did. Anyways, after queen b6, this pawn is hanging, and she goes queen d3. Oh, sorry, the pawn isn't hanging. I am throwing discovered attacks. That's what I'm doing. So, for example, I don't even know what you do as white here. What move to even make? Like, let's say you went b4. Well, I could just take the pawn, and there's a discovered attack. If you go b3, I might be able to do this. And after the queen moves, I thought I was winning a pawn by force if she doesn't move her queen off of c4, but maybe I'm not winning a pawn by force. I don't quite remember what I was thinking here. I thought there was some good discoveries, but I don't think there is. For example, if like b3, I can't take this because it just takes. So I forgot what I thought, but anyways, she gets out of the discovery, which makes a lot of sense. But now, and actually, she has a mini threat, and the mini threat is go knight c4, attacking both the bishop and the queen. So, and I lose the bishop pair for nothing. especially not just the bishop pair, but the dark squared bishop, which the dark squared bishop is considerably very good. So I'll lose the dark squared bishop for nothing if I allowed knight c4, hitting both my bishop and queen. So that's why I go bishop b8. And now if knight c4, I can even go queen c7 and threaten checkmate. But after, well, not threaten checkmate, but for example, if we just do this actually wouldn't be checkmate because the king runs to e2 and the pawn is defended by the bishop. So, but it looks a little bit scary. And actually, but maybe it's nothing to really worry about. But it is kind of weird if I put my queen on h2 and the king's in the corner, or the king's in the center, my queen's in the corner. That's kind of a funny position. Anyways, so but I thought it was fine after bishop b8 because I'm not losing the bishop pair after knight c4. Okay. b3, she's trying to develop her pieces. But her bishop on b2. But as we'll see later in the game, the bishop on b2 actually did a bad job of defending the king. But it should just be about equal. Like, I think in this position, if I had an engine on, which I don't, I actually like to do these recaps with no engine until the game review at the very end for the audience to see. I would assume this position is about minus 0.5 or something like that. Like slightly better for black, but you're not winning the game or anything. But it is slightly better, and black is definitely more comfortable here. I think we both agreed on that after the game. All right, rook fd8. My moves are very, very simple. My rooks are harmoniously in the center, and my bishop are zigzagging around. So she goes bishop e2, and I go knight d5. Actually, kind of, even though I liked my position, I actually struggled to come up with a plan here. I wasn't really sure how to improve my position anymore. So I actually came up with a simple like 2-move maneuver. Just to improve this knight on e7 and win the bishop pair. So, and let's go to knight d5, knight f6. So, in this way, I win the bishop pair, and the more pieces I trade off, the weaker this isolated queen's pawn is, and the more likely I'll be able to win it. So, I wanted to target this weakness and play against this dark squared bishop. Like, this bishop is shut out by its own pawn, and I also wanted to win this light squared bishop. So those are kind of two separate things, but anyways, those are his thoughts coming out in my head. Another thing I was thinking about is that like this bishop is so close to being trapped. For example, if I go knight a5 and rook c1, f5 would actually trap the bishop, which is really, really crazy. After rook takes rook, rook takes rook, this bishop has nowhere to go, like actually nowhere to go. And yeah, the bishop would be trapped. If you try to counterattack, well, I take, you take, I take, and now you're down a piece. So I was happy to see if, so I was thinking about ways to trap the bishop on that's on e5 after I move my knight, but there's no real way to do it because after b5, my knight has nowhere to go. I have to return it, and the bishop will never be trapped because then it can always take the knight and make an equal trade. So that was one thing I was considering though, but I don't think it ever worked. Anyways, so after bishop b2, knight d5, and I play knight f6, and she plays b4, allowing me to trade on my terms. I don't think there's anything wrong with b4 here, but I think maybe the simpler way to play would be to take and play rook c1. Although I guess you probably still have all the problems of your position. You still have this weak pawn. But maybe this is better than what she did in the game. Maybe this is better than b4. I'm not sure. It looks about the same. But, like, I don't know. Like, it's really interesting, actually. Like, if I go back to b6, for example, after knight e5, I probably would have taken, well, I guess in this case, the queen's hanging. But imagine if the queen wasn't hanging. Having like my knight is probably better than their bishop if I can get on the d5 outpost. On d5 it will be touchable. Like if we remove these two pieces off the board, my knight on d5 is really good compared to this bishop. Anyways, that was one thing I was conscious of. Anyways, instead of taking on c6, she goes b4, and now I take on e4, and I want to attack the integrity of this pawn, of these pawns, by playing a5. She can't take because I take the bishop. And she can't push because I would take it. So now she plays knight c4. And if I do go back, she can probably take the pawn. Although, yeah, she can probably take the pawn. I can't take back because the queen would hang. And if I take the knight and she takes, well, once again, the king just runs out to the center and the queen's in the corner for nothing. So that's why I went queen b5 instead. And these pawns really are under attack. But now we play a sequence of moves that kind of simplifies the position. But I think in a favorable way to me, but it should still be holding. So after knight c e5, I take this knight. So now if she takes like this, now I can take this pawn and I'm going to be up at least one pawn for now. And I was pretty happy with my position. But she took with the queen. So if I take the pawn now, SpaghettiOs, I'm kind of dying. This is not what I want. Although maybe I'm not dead, but it doesn't look very pleasant. That's for sure. Looks less pleasant than the other positions. I'll put it like that. So, but now I take, and after pawn takes, now there's no threat on my f7 pawn, and here I actually thought for a while. I think I thought for maybe 13 minutes here. I actually don't remember how long I thought here. I was up on time for the majority of the game, like up about 20 minutes throughout the game. But I think I thought about 13 minutes here on whether or not to trade the rooks, whether to take this pawn first. Or take the rook first. I was actually looking at some things like rook takes and bishop takes and pawn takes, queen g3. I thought was very bad for me. I actually thought I was getting really attacked badly because this pawn is guarded. I can't take it because it's guarded by the queen and rook, and my h6 pawn is hanging. Looking at it now, I guess it's not that bad. I just go queen h7. Or king h7, or maybe even king h8, and I get out of the pin, so this is no longer a threat. So maybe this is actually just fine if bishop takes. But I was actually thinking about just taking this first, just taking the e5 pawn immediately. So yeah, so I wasn't worried about bishop takes c1 because I can take the pawn on e5 immediately, and then let's see. And then I wasn't worried about rook c1 because of what happened in the game, where I take on b4, and after she pins, so I'm not going to be up a pawn because she pins me. But I was actually okay with this because I calculated bishop takes e5. So in this variation, I'm definitely up a pawn. But when I got here over the board, I actually decided there's no way I'm winning this. There's no way I'm winning this. So when I got to this position, so I got to this position because I calculated this position. But when I actually got here, I was like, that's not winning. That's going to be a draw. Even though I'm up a pawn, it's going to be a draw. So that's why I played bishop a7 instead. And I think I have huge threats in this position. After analyzing the game with her and some other people from Ohio State, we actually determined white is probably okay as long as they don't take back the pawn. For example, I'm trying to remember the variations we went through. For example, rook c2. We're covering the second rank, and we were even calculating crazy things like rook d1 check, king h2, and queen f1. And we actually think white is either winning or very close to winning here, despite black getting in with their queen and rook, because white kind of has the first strike. For example, rook c8 check, and here, I think, you'll check, and then here. And it's looking very, very dangerous for black. So probably covering the second rank is the way to go. Don't take back the pawn. Just cover the second rank. and maybe white is actually just doing fine here. So even though I felt like I had the initiative the whole game, and I had a better structure, and I was really the one. I was up on time throughout the entire game too. I feel like she could have held on better if she just was a bit more patient and covered the second rank. Although this is scary to give up the first rank, but it should actually be fine. But she was running low on time here, and she actually took the pawn. But now I get in with the rook. I'm hitting the pawn. And if you try to defend the f2 pawn, so right now it only has one defender, but I have two attackers on it. This bishop is a sniper. If you try to defend it more, I'm going to attack it more. And if you try to defend it even more, well, hello, you're down a bishop now, and you're going to be losing the game. So I feel like taking the pawn was the bad move. Of course, if you take the pawn with the queen, it doesn't change anything because after the queen trade, the bishop is hit, and this bishop covers the opposite color, the white's bishop. This bishop covers the white bishop from coming to the d4 square as well as the rook, but still, it's very stark to see that this bishop is actually horrible. It actually stares into its own pawn, preventing it from moving, while this bishop is awesome and staring into the enemy pawn. So actually, if we go back here, when the bishop was on b8, it's actually very interesting to think about. Like, if I take on e5, I want to be up a pawn, but I'm actually letting white trade off their worst piece. So if I keep their worst piece on the board, like, that's just a bad piece, and my piece is great. So that's actually another reason why I played bishop a7 here. And I think I'm very proud of this decision making. I think it's one of the best decisions I made in this tournament so far. But after pawn takes, I play rook d2, and I'm completely on the second rank now, and I'm gonna go on to win the game. But it is a bit tricky. You have to be precise. Queen a3, attacking the bishop, and potentially going on some back rank checks. I don't think there's anything better. I think this position is already lost, so I'm not going to be critical of it or anything like that. I do just take the pawn though, and get my queen on e2. And now the bishop is hanging, and and if the queen does something weird like this, for example, I'm threatening to check and go king g2, or yeah, queen g2, and it's probably mate somewhere like this. For example, that would be one example of checkmate. It's probably mate, I would imagine. And here, like this, for example. So I have threats like that. But here, she goes bishop a1. So now if I go bishop d3 check, she can just take it, and now I'm losing, and I would be very sad. And of course, I can't go bishop g1 check because the rook would take. But now I just go bishop e3, disconnecting the queen's defense of the g3 square, and now I'm threatening checkmate in 1. But now she checks and takes the b7 pawn, and this queen defends the g2 pawn from afar, but it is too late. It's still too little too late because I go check again. So it's a very cool reroute from my bishop to f2 to e3 to f4, and attacking the king like that. Because, of course, if you go king h1, it doesn't help because check and back rank checkmate. So she goes to g1, but that doesn't help because I go check and queen g3, threatening checkmate in 1. And if you go back to g1, I'm not going to repeat moves. I'm just going to go check here and do a back rank checkmate like this. So here she goes check and takes the bishop, giving up her queen, trying to keep the game going, but it's checkmate nonetheless. So overall, I was pretty happy with this game. I was happy with the way I played. I'm still honestly confused about whether or not, like, I'm honestly interested. I do bet, like, if I were to bet money, I assume bishop g6 is the best move, and you just have excellent control of the e5 square, and maybe you just castle and play for e5 eventually. That I assume that probably is the best way to go. So I assume, like, the game reviewer will say that h6 is okay. But anyways, I'm happy with how I played. I'm trying to think if there's any moment where I regret anything. I'm very happy. Um, I actually, the more I don't remember what discovery I thought I had. I don't remember. Oh, maybe just night before. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So, for example, night before here, and I win the bishop. Was that my idea? I'm not sure if there were any better ideas than that. Not really sure. Maybe there's some combination of like bishop of f5, and you still can't take because of this. And if you go back with the bishop, now I have. No, I don't see it. I don't remember my discoveries because I remember thinking I had discoveries, good discoveries here, but I don't remember. Anyways, but overall, I'm very happy with how I played, and we ended up winning the match. We won the match 3-1. So there was 2 draws and 2 wins on our side. So very, very nice. Actually, around this position, it was really, really tense. Actually, it was really tense at around this position because because it looked like our board 4 was losing, and it looked like our board 1 was holding a draw, and our board 3 was winning. But then at one point, our board 3 just like drew out of nowhere, and then our board 1 declined a draw and just kept playing this endgame. I was really worried that he was gonna lose, and this game was still unclear. Although I think I was slightly better, but it was still unclear at that point. And but we ended up winning 3-1. And our board 4, it looked like he was losing, but he actually clinched a draw down in exchange. And then our board 3 blundered the win into a draw. And then our board 1 grinded out an endgame and, got a draw or got a win deep into an equal night ending. So kind of crazy to think about, but yeah. So yeah, that's round 2 of the Pan American Intercollegiate Chess Championship, and we beat Ohio State. And so after this round 2, we were 2 out of 2, and only 5 teams were 2 out of 2 at this point. So good to see.